So welcome. Thank you so much for attending this. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to my team. It is a huge honor to be working on anything related to Filecoin. I think that we're onto something really big. And it's over the last 7 months, it's been a massive privilege to just be able to explore concepts around the Filecoin network and kind of like learn a lot from all the prior work that's been done. So thank you so much for attending this. Slate would not be possible in the current form it is today without Horace, Martina, Jason, William, and Tara. We have a team that's like really excited about the future of, I think, the internet and what it means to store data that can be retrieved from anywhere in the world. Today, we have 200 plus accounts and over 100 gigabytes of user data on Slate. And I'm hoping that in the long term, when people think about Filecoin and they think about what's being stored, it's actually stuff that we want to remember and stuff that we want to share for all types of research, whether or not be academic or just archiving or just history, just to learn about the progress of humanity and things that we're doing. And so Slate is a huge team effort, and it's 5 core team members, but we've had 17 drive-by contributors. We've had 5 friends from Textile who've been like insanely helpful along the whole way. And Pooja and Juan provide a foundation and a lot of wisdom and guidance that kind of made a lot of the ideation possible. So, thanks to like everyone being kind and just like helping us learn along the way, we've actually built, I think, what's something that's pretty cool. So Slate is completely open source. You can ask me if you need anything. I'm always available. If you want to ask me about implementation details or about security, or if you want to contribute, my communication channels are all open. You can find me on Twitter or you can find me in Slack. So I'm going to go over kind of in this presentation, there's kind of a long timeline of what we did over the last 7 months to find the optimal client experience for Filecoin. And truth be told, we didn't really nail it yet. I think there's a lot more to explore, but I think we're finding a lot of really compelling pieces, and you'll see them along the way. October 15th was a really meaningful day. So much like hard work and determination kind of culminated to that day. And so it was really exciting to be part of that and share some cool things along the way. March 1st is when Slate was called the Filecoin client. You'll see when we change our name to Slate. You'll see when we just stop using Powergate exclusively and actually start moving towards buckets, which is an amazing piece of technology. If you haven't heard of buckets, you should definitely check it out. August 1st is when we started supporting PDFs and videos. So, Slate commonly gets considered like a photo sharing app, but, we have file types of all kinds, and I think we'll expand to many different categories. And September 14th, I hope Martina's not too embarrassed, but it's Martina Long Day. And I think like any team should celebrate teammates that are going above and beyond. So I really want to celebrate, the work that she did to help push us forward. And yeah. So I think the first step to building anything on top of any protocol or, technology is to really understand it. And Filecoin is not like as simple as just like a simple web application. And so I want to give a shout out. I had a huge amount of help from people from the Filecoin team. And I had a chance to work on documentation for 3 months before I started working on the Filecoin client. And so Travis P, Magic, Kuba, like they lent me so much time, and we could go through Slack and we could go through GitHub issues where I could just kind of like ask them questions, and they shared a lot of details and also kind of helped me see the nature of what we're working on. Like a lot of stuff changes over time as you're developing something new, and you have to be ready for that. So long form writing is something I was really passionate about. So I was really lucky to be able to kind of tag along for that. And, I actually did my first storage and retrieval deal back in November 2019 and kind of saw like, oh my goodness, this magic is actually a thing. Like it can really exist. And I really want to like highlight that it's better learning with other people. Like you don't have to do it all by yourself. There's a lot of people who are willing to walk you through what they've walked through. And it's good to share notes between people. And so the Filecoin specs website was an example of, a way to see what the intention was. And then looking at the Lotus team, I was able to see, okay, like, there's some deviation. What's the reason? And like, there's a lot of learning and just being able to shadow those conversations. So very grateful to be part of all of that. And for the documentation website, as a designer, I actually could do my typical process that I do for any web application. I determine themes that I observed. I determine insights from existing products. And then, I pick the place where I want to gamble, and I want to find new opportunities, right? Because you want to find like a new market, you want to find like new users, and you want to be brave, like, because you might make mistakes, but that's part of being, self-conscious and being aware of your choices. You can't just follow tradition. And so we would prototype mood board. In this screenshot on the right, I took 155 samples from every documentation website. And then, I iterated quickly so everyone could see, what am I pulling from all of these different sources? And so in retrospect, designing the documentation was actually pretty simple in comparison to what I was about to take on, which was the Filecoin client. And so a lot of my assumptions there work for, like, if you're just doing, a web application, but Filecoin client is definitely a different problem. And one thing that's different about it is if you just look at the command line tool for Lotus, you can just see a ton of commands that, without, like, if you're not engineering or working on it directly, you have to try these out to see what actually happens. The preconditions and the postconditions are not super obvious to everyone. And so everyone, the Filecoin team and the associated partners are all trying these out daily and finding issues and bugs. But, as a designer, you have to kind of deal with that and also try to imagine what they're capable of doing. And I think that's really challenging. So I did an exercise later on where I made a website with an API to the entire Lotus network. And you can see that there's only 49 on the screen here, but it actually goes on to over 80. So there's like a lot of things that this network has packed into it that, takes a lot of effort to understand. So way more difficult than a typical web application. And this is where I give, I can't give Pooja enough thanks. Like, she took a lot of time in like the peak of like what I feel like was a lot was happening to kind of just walk me through the complexity and detail required to solve this problem. And she helped me in a lot of ways beyond just, like spec writing, but went into the details and drew diagrams. And these diagrams were extremely useful. Like we were ideating along the side of like, oh, there are other products, but hold on, we got to think about what is in the Filecoin client specifically. And so these guiding structures were really useful. And, there's ideas that I'm still unprepared for, like, I don't understand all the nuance between around like data transfer to miners. I still don't understand everything around payment channels. So, it was really great to have an expert like Pooja along who had seen all the discussion around these and what they should be to kind of help guide my design. And so, we started with a really long discovery process before we got into any of the weeds. And Juan and Pooja had a ton of great ideas, and, we're still chasing those today. So I'm excited to continue to explore these. And, Slate, I think, becomes this place where we can. And so you always want to build, even if you don't have the full context, because you still want to have a space where you can explore ideas and try out new things. And now you can become a destination for ideas versus like keeping it in limbo where you don't have anything implemented. And so, when we started the Filecoin client, we want to start at a good place. So I created a mood board with 346 references, and a Slack channel where we could share references. So I want to get I want everyone in Protocol Labs to feel like they were somewhat involved in the shaping of this process. So, I wanted to share pictures with people and get it like, a heat check. Like, do people like what they're seeing? Is it too futuristic? Is it not approachable? And, in our Slack channel, we had a lot of awesome, like, things that built my palette. Like, I could see stuff from old computing. Like, here's a picture of what Ian shared a while ago. And then this corgi, oh my gosh, like, I never told Jesse this, but this corgi changed my perspective on this like super cyberpunk futuristic vision I had for the Filecoin client and made me want to like simplify it. And so I think it's like these kind of things that build the palette help shape your understanding of what you should design, because oftentimes as designers, we kind of get stuck into our own flows and, we don't think outside of what we want, but it's important to have those references. And remember, you're in a group of people that have a lot of different tastes, and designer's job is always to understand that. And so, we did that, and then we went even further. So we looked at a ton of products that, I have a long list of products that I really like. And then amongst peers, we have other products that we really enjoy. In the bottom left corner, I worked on casual gaming before I joined Protocol Labs. Tumblr is an influence for a lot of us. Dropbox, Google Drive, of course, we use those things every day. You have Arena, you have Milanote, which are like awesome ways to organize data. Like, we stand on the shoulders of those guys. And then, Elo and Cargo Collective, which are, I think, like awesome website builders. So we know we're on the web, we know the medium is the website. So kind of putting this into our mood boards to help us understand, that we're working in an ecosystem with a lot of different ideas, and we don't want to be in a vacuum. And so that led to, once you fill your head with all those ideas, you can start working, within like tools like Figma and just really start, drafting away and come up with ideas. So this is like a small snapshot of like one of many, review panels. And I would stamp like this red deprecated on some of these. So, to show that we're moving on, and we do many iterations. And I started with one of my, one thing I'm really passionate about personally is starter projects. And so I always want to start from a really good place. So what we did for the initial prototype that everyone could click through is basically like this navigation left side by right content, all the libraries, all dependencies in place. And we went from here to here. So we drafted up like 22 plus different designs and prototypes. And the difference between this and Figma, I know in Figma you can click through, but I wanted to really simulate network calls. And I really want to simulate like what it feels like to click through an app in many contexts. So, I actually built all of these, and I wanted people to share them around and walk through them and, and get a feel for like, what if it was real? And I think it was really helpful to get a sense of this before sharing it out, because overall the reception from people were like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Like I almost can imagine that it's a real application. So this is kind of the power of prototyping, and eventually get to a place where things feel really clean and you almost can't tell, like this is still fake data. Of course, there's the giveaway and the screenshot is like the nan, but it's like, it's still like, you can start feeling like, oh my goodness, this could be a real thing. And to me, that's really exciting. Like when I can already get that reaction from someone, I'm like, okay, like they're clicking through on their own. They're really having fun. If this is a real product, we might be onto something. And so by May 4th, I put it out there on social media. And I think this is kind of like a turning point, a pretty meaningful turning point, because, this is when I start sharing, like 3 or 4 months into the design process of like, what is going on. And, we had a lot of things going on in the world at the time. We had, COVID, we had, you name it. So it was nice to kind of like get through that initial, crisis mode and start sharing things online with people and start like, kind of, I don't know, just getting the word out there so people come contribute if they wanted to. And I'm gonna take a little sidestep and really thank Anurag for render.com, which has been the easiest way to prototype and share these applications. And we still use them in production, and they've just been super helpful. So I recommend you check them out if you need to just prototype a quick application. As a designer, nothing helps more than just giving people the near finished prototype and getting feedback there. And so also giving a shout out to Ben Perriott, which, I started doing pre-brand after I had launched a prototype for people to play with. And I really like this idea of a brand that can grow with what you're building. So, your features will change. That you're not going to, it's not an exact science. And so having some flexibility and starting with something simple allows for people to give feedback and for you to adjust so you're not stuck with something. And at the time, I got the directive or the idea that we should change the Filecoin client from being the de facto Filecoin client, which I think had some, long-term effects for where we are today with Slate, to, change its name. And so I won't share the person who shared that bottom chat message, but, a lot of people thought Slate was a really cool name. What we did was we produced a website with over like 22 different logos. And then we had names on all of them, people voted. And it was really cool to see, the team, even though they don't talk to each other every day about these ideas, that there was still some underlying truth of what everyone wanted. And it was cool to see that. So we'll get back to that later. This relationship with Textile after doing the prototype is probably one of the things that made, I think, the defining moment for what we're working on. The people at Textile are geniuses, like hands down. And they're not afraid to work on top of an alpha stack, or something new, and build like software that's actually fairly reliable. And to give you some context, like I did some uploads of Amazon S3 and used, their libraries, and, Amazon has a ton of features and the libraries support a ton of things, but just using Textile's bucket API with the hub, my goodness, it was so simple. So we're going to go into a lot of detail here, but really want to highlight that Textile, working with Textile is amazing. And if you haven't even looked at their stuff yet, highly recommend. And I'm happy to chat about anything that they do. It's a lot of really good stuff. And so the plan in June 2020 was to use Textile services. And so we had built that Filecoin client prototype, and it was really easy to integrate it offline with PowerGate. And that's Aaron's work. PowerGate's basically when I became like really confident that this was going to be a real thing. You know, there's still that moment when you're building a prototype where you're not sure if the underlying infrastructure can, let's see, I have a chat message real quick. Let me pause. My cursor is hidden on the screen, so I can't see. Oh, shoot. Yeah, so my cursor is like invisible. And so I can't see where my mouse is. So I'm just gonna, sorry guys, it'll be hard for me to chat. So at least the chat window's up. It'll be tough to see. So you know, in June 15, 2020, we were still planning on going full PowerGate. And PowerGate provided means to do Filecoin storage deals. And what we relied on was local files. So we had a node server and we had use a directory that was local, and you sort the files there, and then we stored files in memory. You know, there would be a lot of things that would lead to a big change, but the model for this is actually fairly simple. So I drafted up a really simple model, which is, you know, you have your offline storage, you have your token, and you have directory, and gosh, I'm sorry, guys. The Zoom is really throwing me off. Okay, I'm back. Cool. So we have offline storage, we have token, directory, of viewing UX and user, and then we have Textile's PowerGate, which is a listing of all the deals, the Filecoin file system, which is probably the most important part, the wallet, and the peers. And this was I was so happy to work with such a simple model. And this is really because underneath the hood, there's a lot going on. But for developers, this is a dream come true. You just need a token to move forward. And so, you know, I started doing crazy machinations in my own mind. And I was like, okay, well, you know, now you have client A and you have client B. And what if we had a directory that we kept local, like an index, and then you can send Filecoin between people, and you can have a deal registry. So whenever someone makes a storage deal, you can like see the deals that come from our product. And then from our product, we know that's a reliable deal because you don't have a deal of garbage data from the network. You don't have to like gamble, you know from a product that you can verify is like, you know, honest about what it's uploading to the network. You know, you could probably retrieve those and we could have a really cool experience around this. So I got really excited. And so the first thing I did was, after all that Filecoin client prototyping work and all of, you know, the planning around integration, I decided to go into a design system. The reason why I didn't want to go into design system is because there was a lot of like smaller reasons, like, yeah, there was HackFS and there were some other cool things that were happening in the ecosystem, but, you know, I wanted to really break up the integrations for the Filecoin client to small immutable parts so that people could really know what they're playing with and they could understand all the parts and pieces. And like, you know, you can just look at the code and see how things work instead of like trying to dig into some documentation, which can be kind of verbose and sometimes get stale because, you know, things change. And so in the design system, I actually was able to reduce the model for whatever user should work with into something really simple. So you have your user, which is your browser, your client. One moment. You have your token, right, which is provided by Textile services, and you have your deals, your Filecoin file system, and your wallet. And getting this model out there, this really simple one out there, I think is what allowed a lot of people to start becoming like hobbyists with this thing. Like, okay, I can follow this. If I just need a token, I can make a simple Filecoin client app. And so I did a HackFS talk where I went over 6 different things that you could do with our design system. And it's available on NPM. It's a little bit, it needs some more maintenance, but you know, this was an easy way for people in HackFS to kind of like build a GUI for the first time without having to know any of the styling rules. And this also was a huge opportunity and what led to a lot of the community contributing and getting involved with the Filecoin client. And this is what made my year, because you start realizing that there were people internationally who cared about Filecoin. And you know, Daniel here, who is just awesome and just jumped in, built this odometer feature for the generate PowerGate token. And it became one of our more popular components. And so, it's a simple structure. You have the code on the right. You can see, here's how easy it is. And it's not safe to implement the token in the client, but for, testing purposes, it's good for learning, and then you can make it more secure later. And so it was awesome that, there's people that I haven't actually had a chance to work with directly outside of a mentoring capacity, kind of just jump in. And we had a lot of different use cases. So create a Filecoin address. This made making a Filecoin address something that was less nebulous, less kind of, it just wasn't, before, like if you just said to someone on the street, like make a Filecoin address, they wouldn't even know where to start. They don't have a visual model for it. So we provided like a really simple thing. It's like, you only need a name, you only need to type, and we just want you to know if it's your default address or not. Simple. And the code is on the right again. Same thing with looking at wallet balances. We want to get into this most simplest form. Any other engineer could go and make a much more complicated version. That's great. Like that'd be the best case for us if you were to make a better component. By making that first stride, we were hoping that people would kind of, be like, oh yeah, like this is simple, I can do more. And storage and retrieval deals, another idea that was in, the ether that wasn't like super clear to everyone what that looked like. We had done some simple mocks of that and showed off the code for that. And today, actually, the code has gotten a lot simpler. So, if you are curious about any of these examples, I can show you more later. And then, peers list, we never really explored this, but it was kind of like an opportunity for someone else to kind of jump in if they wanted to and send an address, Filecoin, and the code for that too. And, this is when Martina made, I think, like a huge contribution that made me want to work with her even more, because, she created a component that, could be educating of how the network works while you use it. And so I think settings components should just teach you how the network works. And so when you go in, you can see like a primer of what hot storage is, what cold storage is. And so I thought this was awesome, and I wanted to highlight some really great work here. And so now, with that model of user token, deals, Filecoin system, and wallet, you have a design system that pairs with it. You can just start imagining a whole bunch of users in the ether all doing this at the same time. And I think this is what Filecoin needed. It needed a story for all of us coming together and using the network, and we needed a simple model we could follow. But we had a hiccup here. So it wasn't really a bad thing. I think, we used the NERPA DevNet, and I stayed on this network too long. So it was really performant for our case, and I didn't really notice any performance issues, but we didn't transition fast enough to the testnet. And so we were in some kind of like an isolated paradise for a little bit, but we need to make a change, and I'm glad that we eventually did, but I would have liked to get there sooner so I could have exposed some of the things that would have been helpful pre-launch. And at the time, I was feeling extremely confident. So July 17, 2020, I focused on recruiting. I sent this tweet out, and I'm channeling a lot of what my peer Rich says, who says teamwork makes the dreams work. And so we want to do things with other people and learn with other people in parallel. I think people can watch each other's backs, and they can all learn together and share insights you might not be able to find alone. And so I wanted to start with a diverse team at the very beginning, and I'm really grateful for the people who have come along and wanted to reach out. So more on that later, but July 10th, 2020, I removed the Filecoin branding and we became Slate. And Slate was a choice out of 22 names voted on by many people in Protocol Labs. In an alternate universe, Slate would have been named Argo, which is, I think, kind of cool. I thought the name was always neat, but Slate, I think, beat it out by a few votes. And Andrew, at the time, suggested I integrate buckets into Slate. And this was like a huge turning point to, Slate, because before, if in the previous slides, you saw the model was so simple. It was just, user token and like a few functions. But when we could bring in buckets, I realized, oh my goodness, we have access to IPFS gateways now, and we can do retrieval in the browser in a really cool way. And so I was able to integrate buckets locally July 19th. And I think that's the first day after the name change where Slate was no longer a pure Filecoin client. And so a lot changed there. And it set us on a different course. And I realized Textile buckets were perfect for what we wanted. Powergate is awesome file storage built on top of IPFS and Filecoin, but buckets was a dynamic directory storage built on ThreadDB and leveraged UnixFS. And so what I started to realize is like, okay, we have a directory structure for every deal now. And if we have that directory structure, this is going to make retrieval situations a lot easier. And also you can do things with directories because you can have associated files. And so I put people, when we started thinking about this, on like, what if we got Unity games onto Slate, and this opened up a whole bunch of things. And I think the possibilities started getting me even more excited about, what this product could become. And so I made a new model. You have user A, you're running local software. You have Slate, which is a storage reference, identity, libp2p token. It keeps your token for you. You can manage it yourself, which we will ship later, but you can use it centralized. You can use it with our authentication network and as a directory of your friends, so you know who you trust. That was an idea we pulled from the previous version of Slate. And then you have interactions with buckets, ThreadDB, and Textile's PowerGate. And so we took that, and now from that model we went even further to another step, which is we have the Slate client now. And we have a library of CAD references, slates, friends, SDK integrations, which is coming soon, API key management, Textile Hub key management, any other service key management, Filecoin deal history, Filecoin archiving automation. And we can use all of those things in the hub. And then in the hub, we can work with the Filecoin network. We have a wallet, we have deal status, et cetera. And so our models just kept evolving as we started realizing the power of the technology we're using. And then we took it even further with the typical my typical Galaxy brain style. I was like, okay, whoa. So then we got one user doing all this against the Filecoin network. What if we had many? So I produced another crazy diagram. And I think then it started becoming obvious to the Slate team that, wow, we're touching something that's going to have a ton of possibilities. And so if you look at this crazy diagram, it's pretty wild what if you were to look at this without any code reference, but you look at Textile's API is just so simple. Like you have your private key, we generate a libp2p token for you as a user. You don't even know what that is. And you got buckets with key info to authenticate with 2 secrets. And then you can get the bucket constructor, and then boom, I can just make an async await call for buckets.list. And in this case, I'm just removing all the user's buckets. So writing a method like this, only 5 lines of code. And as long as you have some understanding of what's going on, it becomes fairly simple. Here, if I just want a list of buckets, it's very, very simple. Every user we have has a token, and then you have you check, the token's validity, and then you authenticate with buckets, and then you set up threads, and then you can do buckets.list. So we took, I think people start with those complex models, but the power of using Textile services is that once you have that complex model, you can really get to somewhere a lot more simpler. And so it was time to have a core team. It was time to have a group of people that were contributing full-time. People had been contributing to our design system. We had a large pool of people who were interested. And I still remember the first commits of everyone on our team. So Jason contributed code on June 23rd and also wrote the first tutorial for the fastest way to use PowerGate, which is really cool. Martina did her first commit on June 28th. Tara did her first commit on June 28th as well. Will did his first commit on July 1st, and Horace did his first commit on July 28th. And these were all meaningful contributions that kind of snowballed into a lot more really cool stuff. So it's really cool that, once you put all those materials out there, I call that the meta language. And once you put the meta language out there and people can see examples of the code, all of a sudden they start having the cogs in their mind going okay, wait a second, this is really simple. I could contribute to this. So it's really cool to see this take shape. And then, we had social media, pushing out for more recruiting, and T started to grow. In August to September, we had the opportunity to work with Narrative, and they killed it. So I would have slides to talk about the brand book, which is open source. So we open source the brand book, which not a lot of other companies do this, or teams, projects do this. But we open source that brand book. And so we wanted everyone to have access to it if they wanted to use the materials. And, it was really a once in a lifetime opportunity to work with them. They're just super talented. So Tom, who likes to keep his face hidden, And I wasn't going to troll Tom in this call because I wanted to honor that. But Mac and Tiago, you know, we had an awesome time working with them to like really create the brand and shape for this product. And I think it gave it a little bit extra lift because, you know, it's really cool that we have a diverse team thinking about things, but, you know, it's nice to have some help from the outside to like really give us a better visual presence so people can understand what we're doing. And August 1st, 2020, I put all the PDFs and videos on Slate. You know, so here's an example of the code, you know, like we just check the type that we keep in buckets and then ta-da, PDFs. And so I thought, you know, I don't think everyone else had realized at the time, but I was like, oh man, like this network's become a real thing. Like you can just store a PDF and then just retrieve it. And it doesn't feel different from the existing services. Like, and you can share it on the internet. And so for me, it's kind of a big moment. I nerd out about this a lot, but I imagine, you know, people are like, come on, Jim, like Filecoin works, not a big deal, but whatever. I did a class August 17, 2020 to teach people how to use the developer API for Slate to upload files. And so this was a cool opportunity to show off the team for the first time. I don't think a lot of people on the internet knew this was the founding team for Slate, but it was really cool to see, you know, like the reaction. And, you know, I'm really proud because we didn't, you know, we started from like a really diverse group of people from around the world. And so, you know, we had people from Canada, Ghana, you know, Taiwan, and it was really fun to start a team this way. And so the developer API is a sleeper in Slate. And what I mean by sleeper is like, I think it's going to be actually pretty big because you can easily generate developer API key. And with a few lines of JavaScript, I'll let you guys explore yourselves. You can actually just, you know, make an API call, get your slates, and then store files in Slate. And so in my demo, when I did it, there was a bug, of course, and I was really embarrassing. But today, you know, there's people who are moving their photos off of Instagram to Slate. And that makes me really happy because I think, you know, philosophically, Filecoin is going to be this really wonderful place to store data long-term. And so when people are making the move to Slate, I can already see that path of thought hitting its full vision where, you know, people are going to be able to archive their photos and have full control over, you know, where they store it. And in the future, you know, as I'll get into later, we have ways of targeting specific miners now too. So you can actually pick the miner in the world you want to put your encrypted data on. So it's really exciting. And the API, you know, like we want it to be really simple. You know, so if you look at eTarget files, bracket 0, you can see that, you know, we're just using the HTML5 input API on change. And, you know, we make an API call. It's a for multi-part call. So it just goes to a server and that's it. So all you need is an API key and you have your file in the browser and you can upload it. And so Textile buckets makes this really easy. Render.com services make it really easy, but we want to provide a really simple way for people to just use things the way they're used to without, you know, realizing that's on Filecoin. But then once they realize it's on Filecoin, they know it's on a better network. August 23rd, 2020, Mainnet hits Filecoin, which this is a really big deal for me because I always want a lot of artwork on the Filecoin network. I want to preserve like museum art. And so this is a really cool opportunity to do this. And so, you know, we started really digging into the implementation of, you know, automatically storing Filecoin data to the Filecoin, storing data to the Filecoin network. So we had an archiving flow. And so, you know, you have a user who one second. You have someone who wants to preview a Filecoin deal. You have someone who wants to view a slate. And so you can see the slate, right? You can see all these beautiful paintings. And then you have your user's data bucket where that painting, the source of truth for that painting is. And with automatic Filecoin archiving, now the user knows that they don't have to worry about if that's backed up or not. And then soon they'll be able to retrieve those backups. And so we wanted to build that experience. And the lines of code for that are really simple. You know, Textile, again, has a really simple API for just using the Filecoin network, which is buckets.archive. And, you know, you have the key of the bucket that you want to use. And then simple as that. To add on to that even further, so we have a developer API. We even moved more forward with a Chrome extension. So Jason killed it with this, and it totally came as a surprise. Like at first, Jason had already been doing a lot of tutorials and design system work. He did some of the loaders and other things, but he then designed and built an entire Chrome extension. And I think this adds to the story even more. So you have your Chrome extension, you have an image on the internet, and you want to back it up onto the Filecoin network, or you want to use it now. Maybe you just want to start sharing this for research, and maybe you're gathering a list of cake recipes, whatever. And so the fact that he did this kind of adds to our whole developer API story. He uses the developer API to do it, and he made it open source. So we're hoping that more examples like this will exist so people can build things. And so another thing to highlight is design system improvements leading up to launch by Horace and Martina. So we had, after doing all the API work, a lot of the prog needed a facelift. So we did a new login screen. We did search, which you can use Slate right now and search the entire Filecoin. So you can search the entire Slate network for Filecoin deals and etc. You can, see my Slate. It's full of cake. Here's another one. And you can see, you can form a peers list of people you trust. So in the future, we'll have a way to retrieve a bucket from another user. And if you trust that user, you can get access to that bucket. And then, new list views. And so other ways to view data on Slate. And then here's an example of the early version of the profile view. And, we started adding more marketing so people could see the vision. So we wanted to highlight contributors, namely the whole Textile team and, Pooja and Jeremy, as well as, show off some of the other examples of how we organize data so we get feedback from the community. Will and, Tara really killed at these market page concepts. We had, I think we updated the top section. So now we have a featured section where as we get more featured data sets, we'll probably include those, as people upload things. And so we're getting cool stuff on Twitter. And so we'll keep adding things there. And then, some ideation around how cool it can be to have, a more social network, with activity and user messages and DMs. And so starting to set the foundation for that as we plan to explore it. And so after 4 days, we ended it with 700 users, 10 gigabytes of data stored, 12 5 out of 5 reviews on a very crowded product hunt. So it was a really huge lift to have everyone on the team work on top of the foundation that we built. And we had a successful launch, so that was really cool. And we had 0 downtime, and our product looked great. So September 14th is official Martina Long Day. So congratulations, Martina. Thank you for all that hard work. And we also, after that point, were able to focus and double down on the Filecoin archiving deal story. So, we have, we wanted it to be easy to automate these deals whenever people uploaded files, but we want users to have control. So we don't want to abuse our users, and we want to make sure that they know what's happening. So forcing encryption was an important option for us. Allowing Slate to make archive deals on your behalf was, something that I feel like I wanted to be careful around. By default, it should be on, but we didn't want to put users in a bad spot. And we also ensure that users have at least 100 megabytes of data stored before that happens. And so here's the work that Aaron did to help us along with that. So, after all that work that we did with PowerGate before, we had a good sense of okay, here are the configuration options that we need to make a Filecoin, storage deal, and a custom one, right? So you can use the default settings and we'll, find the optimal settings. But if you want it to be custom, if you want to target a specific miner, you could do that. So we did that, and our model expanded. So before we had automatic Filecoin archiving, if you saw in the diagram before. Now we have anything you want, storage deal in the Filecoin network. And so allowing users to do this gave people a way to kind of use Slate to make any kind of deal they want to, with any miner they wanted to. And I think right now it's probably the easiest way to make a deal on the Filecoin network, unless you're running a Lotus node and maybe you can copy and paste a command or something like that. But at least you don't have to run anything locally on your machine, just using the browser. The only unfortunate aspect is the 4 gigabyte limit. And so here, is kind of the secret sauce for, how we clone the bucket. How do we, make sure that the bucket's labeled correctly? And then, we get the key and then ensuring that every user has encrypted buckets so that we don't just store arbitrarily unsafe data or data that the user doesn't want people to see. So we want to make sure that story was there, and I'm really happy that Textile was able to provide that API for us. And here's even more of a glimpse into the secret sauce. So you can see here, we have workers running all the time, and these workers basically, you can see a deal receipt. So you have the deal ID, the root CID, proposal CID, PCID. You have the formatted size, which is something we added ourselves so that we could keep track of things. And you have reference to the user, and you have also reference to the miner. So this is super useful because, right now in Filecoin land, it's hard to track down a deal after it's been made. But since we keep our own index, we can kind of see, like the deal history, and we can have a better sense of what's on the network. So it was really useful to have this. And so you can see this API endpoint right now on Slate after October 15th. By the time that Filecoin launched and the news had been out, we already had 180 plus successful deals on the Filecoin network. And so this was awesome. We had a product that got to launch with the Filecoin network that also has working deals. And so I think being able to prove this out and be able to have the average deal cost, average cost per gigabyte, average deal size, I think is really promising. Of course, this data, things are going to change a lot, and we don't know if it's going to be really stable. But starting out here was really cool, and bolstered my confidence, at least, in what we're doing. I think if we can provide cheaper data storage for everyone in the world, and it's a network that no individual group can just bully others into doing certain things, I think we have something really big here. And right now in Slate, if you log in, you can actually see your user deal history. So I recommend you go create an account on Slate, make a Filecoin storage deal once you've had 100, 200 megabytes of data worth storing, and make a storage deal. And I think you'll see something pretty cool where you can see the deal history. And I don't think everyone gets how simple it is right now. I think there are of course small bugs, but I think that it's kind of like a new stepping stone for internet archiving. So I think it's pretty cool. And all of this is part of our mission to put meaningful data on the Filecoin network. So here's Tara. She's storing some of the works of my favorite designer, Kenohara. We can store rare images. We can store PDFs. In Juan's presentation on Monday, you can see that we have photo archives. I keep a list of papers that everyone on the Slate team should read, and you have a ton of cool references. And then, now we can focus on really cool stuff like miner indexes and, start really making it easier to find which miner you want to store data with. And so, yeah, this is kind of, I think puts us in a really cool place. So, we, as Slate continues to design and explore the ecosystem, we'll continue our exact same process, which is discovery, learning about these new APIs, learning about what can be done. And I think we have a couple new things along the way that will be really interesting. So stay tuned for that. So Henry asked me, what is the next milestone you're most looking forward to? I'm going to answer this live. I am super excited about the retrieval story. And so, we have people who are going to be making, Filecoin deals and archiving really interesting stuff, like maybe paintings from the Prado, maybe rare data sets that they've collected. My favorite are photos of trees. So hopefully people will have that. And what you'll be able to do on Slate is you'll be able to go and retrieve that deal, and then it'll appear in a UI that you can see and view. So I think that's going to be really awesome, and I can't wait for that. Oh, I love this. I love this question too. I answered this live as well. Any deeper protocol design insights from Filecoin about Filecoin from building Slate? What should happen in Filecoin v 2.0, and what was unexpectedly nice? And so, from the beginning, building using buckets was really nice. The only issue that we had was data transfer for large files, but that's a problem that everyone experiences. And I'm kind of the culprit there. Like, you have to understand a lot about header timeouts and request timeouts and memory to do really large file transfers, like 6 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes over the browser. Like it's more trivial doing it locally, but I think in the browser is really hard. So, Buckets already has like awesome pre-configuration. Render has good pre-configuration. It's basically just figuring out the chunk uploads and understanding, in detail how that API works from whatever language you're using or whatever framework you're using. I think what Filecoin V2, we're learning a lot about like how the miner API, like how a miner picks their metadata is not super fleshed out. Like we know the storage ask from, the ghost struct is very clear. You have probably like 6 or so fields, and you have like a verified field that's not like super clear what that means by just reading it. You have to read into it deeper. But I think that we could do a lot more to include meaningful metadata in the miner API so that we can build like a really cool storage market. Like if you imagine like miner APIs have enough information that you could start recording historical information, you could build charts and miners could have performance and they can really compete. And you could have like miner web pages, right? And so I can imagine a group of people, and Dinesh and I talked about it this morning, where it was like, you have a group of countries get together and be like, oh, we want to set up like a foundation and have some miners in some neutral place in the world. And then the governments are sending, data to those miners, and that miner has a configuration that's optimized for like 10-year, 20-year storage, and be able to configure those finer bits without, having to implement too much beforehand. So I'm lucky that I get to work with Textile, and Textile gets to experience all the bugs for generic cases, but it'd be nice if like you could configure all those things and even have like an alias and note field so you could like name the miner something beyond like F0442 or whatever. So yeah, I think like for storing and retrieving there, if you play by the book and you have enough Filecoin and you have no situations where the network will throw you off, it works most of the time pretty well. And if you use something like Textile, it should work all the time. But when it comes to like the supporting structures, like for retrieval asks or storage asks, I think we need to go a lot deeper on that. Is Slate hosted on Slate Filecoin? If not, what would that take? I think we're not far away from that. Slate has a vision for kind of being a key manager, right? Like, there are people who talk about this new era of data as access control data, right? So you have a lot of control over who sees the data. And if you want to pull it back from the internet, you can, and you have that kind of control and no one else has access to it anymore, that kind of thing. And so I think we still need to build our own infrastructure. I think like there is a case for Slate moving towards its own structure on its own Kubernetes setup on GCP. But I wouldn't mind, if it made sense to have some aspects on a static, like provider. I'm not sure yet, but I would be happy to talk about this more if you want to jump into our Slack. Yes, I love this question. Do you have any recommendations, insights for new entrepreneurs looking to build an innovative, unique product on Filecoin? I really like this question a lot. And so you can see in the 7 months, I put together 92 slides that basically shared a lot of the history of what we've been doing, and there's a lot. And I might have fumbled some of the details while talking about it, but there are a couple key tenets that I don't want people to forget. And one is that like, I think a lot of us who are building products are in the business of building meaningful tools. And so you really got to like think about what kind of shape does this tool have to take if someone's going to use it every single day. And sometimes you have to walk away from the merits and the philosophical strength of like the new context that you're establishing, right? Like Filecoin has a beautiful vision. IPFS has a beautiful vision, but walk away from that for a little bit of time and think about every day when I wake up, what are the tools that I reach for first? And then why do I use them? And unpack that for yourself. And then look for that pattern in every product that you see on the internet, and never build in a vacuum. Like one of the biggest things I used to say to people, like when they were building products, early on is like, you're not alone in your ideas. There are a ton of brilliant people out there, and everyone has a slightly different thinking model. It's really important to take some time, pause and think and see what else is out there, and take notes, learn, and be a little patient, and don't feel bad if someone's come to the idea before you, because execution is also everything too. Momentum's everything. So it's a great thing that other people have thought of the idea, but take some time and really think about it, and think about why you really want to invest in that tool. And so if you get the checkboxes where like you really understand, I think Luke Robolski has like an awesome website where he talks about like, just watching people use a mobile app or watch people use a website. You have a good understanding of what people like to do when they're on their computers. You can take that learning, and if you combine it with this new type of like context you want to establish, which is like, okay, well, we also want to enable superpower. The combination of those two will lead to a really good first start. And then, of course, after you have a product with a lot of users, you really have to start thinking about, okay, well, what are the people that I made promise to? Like, I made promises to a lot of people in my product, how am I following through, and what do they need? And so that would be like kind of the recommendation. I think that aspect of tool design, just like if you're designing a city and you want to make like a really functional intersection, just because the materials change or because, you have heated sidewalks, doesn't mean that the intersection fundamentally is different. Maybe you don't want the stoplights to be so close to the side, the walkway. So, when pigeons are sitting up there, they don't like crap on you or something like that. Some of these considerations are still, very relevant. So I think the thoughtfulness, the patience to like look at what else is out there and look at it with an open mind, and then think about, day-to-day interactions. I think that will go a long way, and it will help a lot of people in crypto and blockchain and peer-to-peer. It's not a kettle humidifier, because it's yeah, I like it in the backdrop. I feel like it looks cool. Thank you guys so much. Sorry, a lot to cover and I might have fumbled some things, but I'm always available for questions. If you guys have any other questions, you can ask me in Slack or Twitter.